Alright guys, thank you very much for joining us. It is 12:15 and we are actually streaming live now. Today we are really lucky to have Prof Desai. I know Prof Desai for the longest time in Singapore, and I think we got to work very closely together in one or two projects. One was actually where he started SMU's IIE.
Institute of Innovation and
That's right.
Entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, big as well, right? Which is the
PAG was one of the two incubators. Yeah.
Right. That's right. That's right. And I am also working with Prof at in the organizing committee for MTech Asia. Right. MTech Asia is actually an emerging technology conference which happens every beginning of the year. And basically, we are in the organizing committee, and we are actually looking for innovators under 35 right now to apply to the award. Right, these are actually young innovators that have done something extraordinary, whether in the scientific field, in the research field, or in the entrepreneurial field. Right, and basically our list of innovators under 35 will be then submitted to the global list, and the global winners are like Mark Zuckerberg, Sergey, and all those guys. Right, so this is really a who's list. And we are actually very fortunate that in the last few years we do have a few Asian innovators that were listed in the global list, right? And one of them actually is still with SUTD. Another one has actually gone to the AI division of Baidu, right? And they're quite good guys. So if you guys have anybody that could apply, please go send them to the MTech Asia website, and the links are all in there. But without further ado, Prof is really a person about innovation. I mean, he's been talking about innovation, and I think, when I saw Prof, I jumped at the opportunity when Prof said that he has some time to spare.
I get a little worried when people call me Prof because the expectations go up. I don't know whether I can deliver. So call me Desai.
Yes, Desai. So I think it's going to be a good session today. And without further ado, I'll give the stage to Desai.
Thanks a lot. A little bit about myself so that you have a better understanding. I've been in the innovation space for about 42 years. Yeah? And I have, for example, Lux is my former colleague, and we work together. And during this time, I've created, initially for 6 years in India, I've created about 4 products over the 6-year period, including an information security product that was licensed to the Ministry of Defense there, and my company derived about $100 million over a 10-year period, supplying other things. And the other one was relational database system. My team built it ground up. The other one had to do with communication technologies. And the fourth one used to be design verification, logic simulation design verification. So a lot of things I did. Then I went to the US, studied my PhD thesis. IBM wanted it, so I stayed in Tokyo for about a year to transfer, do a brain dump, and came to Singapore in '85. I was brought to be a part of the startup team of Institute of System Science, the research side. So we did a lot of interesting stuff. We created technologies, and we transferred some of them to Hitachi, Fujitsu, to National Semiconductors, to Computer Associates, Apple, and at the same time some of them went on to become startup companies. What makes me especially human is that some of the innovations I created failed. Otherwise, if everything succeeded, there must be something wrong with me. I don't have a Midas touch, right? So, in that sense, I've learned a lot from it, and I never wanted to be an academic. But around 2001, I had a health problem. I won't say scare, a real problem. And my wife said, you cannot live your life this way. You have to find something less intense. And she didn't understand. It's not the job, it's me. So, but your wife, whenever she says, I've been married for 40 plus years. Now, the real thing is, whenever your wife says something, you just do it. Yeah? So that your married life is very happy. Oh yeah, I see you're cooking. Yeah? Okay, so you're going to buy me a bottle of beer later, right? For making your life better. Okay, so then I went on to join the SMU School of Information Systems, where Stephen and I, we created the school. I'm a co-creator of the school. Designed the undergraduate program, I taught about 8 undergraduate courses, and I also set up something called Technopreneurship Track. If you do 5 courses beginning year 3, and if you do well in each one of them, you will end up with a company. In fact, I used to have about 30 people in my class, and almost half of them would go on to start a company. And that's kind of environment we had. And in 2008, I was asked to set up a BIG, or Business Innovation Generator, which is really a incubator, but we didn't want to call it an incubator because everyone who had a real estate had an incubator. So we said it has to be more than an incubator. So that's why we call it Business Innovation Generator. And it's sort of, the acronym is nice, big. Yeah? And people scared me. They said that if you say big, you're going to fail. I said, so I fail big. I don't fail small. I'm an innovator, so I'm used to this kind of environment. And then, of course, in 2008, my president of SMU at that time called me and said that they wanted to set up an Institute of Innovation Entrepreneurship, and whether I would be willing to do that for him. I said yes, but I'm also the associate dean. I know I can do one of these two well, but I cannot do both well, equally well at the same time, concurrently. So he took 6 months to negotiate with my dean that I could step down, and then I went over and started the institute to sort of compress the history there. We trained about 1,000 teams. We established an innovation culture in SMU, and then 1,000 teams in innovation entrepreneurship, of which about 150 teams we helped them create companies. We helped about, all of them raise about 13 million Singapore dollars in early stage investments and about $4.5 million in government grants. This is for the companies. Independently for the university, I raised about $20 million for programs. And around 2016, I went in to set this up for only 4 years. I wanted to get out and do something different, but I couldn't get out. No one was willing to carry the ball. So finally, I went to my president and said, okay, I need to leave. I need to get out. So 2016, they decided they would let me step down from that. And then I really had an option to continue with SMU, but I said no point because I worked for 14 years. I've done a lot of things. I designed a Master of Science in Innovation program there. I designed a Doctor of Innovation program. So I said, I've done enough for SMU now. I want to take this experience and share it with the rest of the world. So here I am. So Chuck was kind enough to invite me. He's always been talking to me about this group, and I said, okay, I'll come and talk. Now, I have many methodologies. Today is not about methodologies. Today is about looking back on why people succeeded. Because when I went into SMU, my dean, Steve Miller, said, oh, Desai, now that you're an academic, you need to own an area and you have to do work in that area. I said, oh, I never realized that that's a requirement, yeah? Because I was always opportunistic. Depending on what topic came up, I used to do things, yeah? So I said, okay, the one thing that I've been doing all my life is innovation, so innovation shall be it. And so that's how I became focused on innovation. I created 5 proprietary methodologies, one for incremental, one for business model innovation, one for service innovation, adjacent innovations, many things, and we'll talk about it later. So this is not the forum to go into details, but what I want to share with you, and I want to see an interactive session. I don't know, we don't have a feedback on live streaming, there's no feedback. People can ask you questions. So let's try to keep it thing, and I will walk you through. We don't need to finish the slides. I think it's more important that you get value rather than I having to go through the slides. But I have an approach that I've set up which is very simple and probably thought-provoking, and I will use past examples of why they succeeded, and that's probably one way we can get a better understanding. And this is something I went through. When I decided innovation is going to be my area, I said, okay, I started by saying that why did innovation succeed? Some of them, while others failed. Because if I can understand that, I can come up with approaches for identifying innovation opportunities that will succeed. They have the potential to succeed, but please understand, idea is probably worth 5 or 10% of the entire effort. It's really the execution. A lot of people fail in execution. So I don't want you to get carried away because I'm talking about all these things that getting a great idea is the $1 billion in the bank. It never happens, it's the execution. And I'm an angel investor as well. And the reason I was an angel investor is not because I wanted to make money. As an angel investor, you get a ringside seat to learn the mistakes people do. So I learned from every angel investment I made. on why people do things wrong. It's much different from, reading a case study or going to Harvard Business School or whatever, right? So with that, any questions before I start? Any questions? I hope you don't mind drinking water, because I don't have half my salivary gland, so I need to drink water from time to time. Any questions? Okay, what I want to walk you through, whenever I approach topic, these are important things. I'm sure that you are aware of these 5 W's in the hedge. It's a very interesting way to understand any space. So I will walk you through, take one at a time and talk to you on these things. First thing I want to look at is what is an innovation? A lot of people use innovation in different contexts, different people interpret it differently. I want to walk you through this, yeah? What is this? What is this?
Door.
Sorry?
Doorknob.
Doorknob. Yeah, speak out, this is a fear-free zone, I suppose, right? So don't be worried. So yeah, it's a doorknob. How many of you will buy this? And this is a typical reaction when I ask any group, yeah?
No.
Is it creative?
Yes, it is.
Okay, the first thing we want to be very clear is the difference between creativity and innovation. Creativity is required for innovation, but not everything that is creative qualifies to be innovation. This is an example of a great piece of creative art, creative work, but okay, except for probably some exhibitions or museums or whatever which want to showcase some interesting designs, this is not going to be popular among common people. Okay, let's talk about this. What is this?
Toaster.
Toaster. So why did the person makes this toaster? Why?
So you get to see how
brown it is. So what is the problem they addressed?
Today's toasters you can't see.
You can't see, you get over toasted, dark toast, and then you have to take a knife and scrap it off and things like that. So here visually you're able to see the amount of browning, you're able to stop. So that is a very important understanding. Innovation is always a solution to a pain or a problem experienced by people. Here the pain was too much of darkening of a toast. So if you are able to find a solution that really solves the pain for a community of people or target customers, then you're in good shape, yeah? So, but there is one more. If this was going to cost $500, how many of you will buy it? Okay, I'll drop the price to 300. 200. 50. That's a point. It doesn't matter, the number is not important. The most, sorry?
About 100 maybe.
150. The most important thing is not the exact number, but the pricing has to match the value. Yeah, the pricing has to match the value. If the pain experienced is very deep, people are willing to pay a very high price. If it's a shallow pain, people might say, yeah, I'm happy to live with a darkened toast, I don't care, right? So then the pain here is really shallow, so the pricing has to be down. So it's totally in relation to the amount of pain, the depth of pain that they suffer. Okay? So we said everything creative is not innovation. Second, we said it has to address a pain point, yeah? And then properly priced. Let's look at this. What is this?
A cup with a slot for your cookies.
Sorry?
A cup with a slot for your cookies.
Yeah. So what pain does it address? What does it solve?
Why it allows you to just take your cookies and then just dip into the cup. And
Yeah.
then you can just eat it.
True.
But it's not exactly a big pain, but in fact it introduces even more pain, because if you leave your cookies in this state, right, they will actually become like those are crispy after a while, and then you actually introduce more problems along with it.
Probably, yeah. So if you didn't have that slot, you need to have
Plate.
both your hands engaged, yeah? So the pain it solves is frees up one hand, yeah? So that you're able to carry the cookies and the drink just with one hand. And whenever I show this, people tell me, oh, Desai, cookies may fall out, yeah? Which is true. For left-handers, it will fall out. But the good news is they also make one with a handle on the other side, so it doesn't fall out as well. So you have to decide whether you're a left-hander or a right-hander and buy the right thing, yeah? But more importantly, this is where I want to bring in the concept of, people talk about design thinking. Design thinking, I'm an engineer, we taught design thinking from day one, right? So if this is a problem, it's likely to fall out. You know, left hand, right hand kind of thing. So basically, innovation in this case is for right-handed people. A target customer is right-handed people, right? So then, if you really want to find a common solution for both right hand and left hand, what can it be? Is there another way of designing an innovation? Yeah? So for which that's an answer. Yeah? There's a pocket. No, it's not going to fall down. It can be both right-handed and left-handed, whatever the case may be. Yeah. So you find it's very important that you are pretty clear about the target customer base that you're going after. If you're not very clear, then your innovations fail. Let me stop here. Any questions? You want this to be interactive, right? Stop me anytime you want. So now let's address, we saw what is an innovation. So we're all on a common page, I suppose. Why? Clearly one is a pain. Yeah? We talked about it quite a bit. The second is really, sometimes we want enhanced experience, or I call it pleasure for short. So, you know, you may have a black and white TV. I lived through a black and white TV, and when color TV came, the program did not change, but I had a better experience here. So both are possible, yeah? Pain and experience. Typically what happens, well, pain, when you find a solution, it's a must-have solution here. Typically, enhanced experience is good to have. So there's a big difference between must-have and good to have. When you have an innovation that is a must-have, people don't mind buying it, yeah? Because it's must-have. If it is something good to have, people think twice about it. So you have to ask yourself, anytime you come up with an idea, is this a must-have or is it a good to have? And it's important to think about must-have opportunities, because you don't need to spend a lot of money in educating your target customer base or in advertisement dollars or whatever. So it's much better to go after must-have kind of opportunities. So when I was asking this question about what innovation succeeded, I found every innovation either addressed a pain or enhanced experience. So I call them innovation drivers. Yeah? But the solution to the pain is like a medication. You have no choice, you have to take it. Yeah? Whereas the other one is more like vitamins. It's an optional, right? Optional. So must-have versus good to have. Yeah? So I'm 68. I still don't have to take vitamins, right? So I don't need them. Right? So basically, that's how it is. I want to share. How many of you know of this? Yeah? Innovations don't have to be rocket science. This is called coolest. Basically, the guy went on Kickstarter. He tried to raise money for this. The pain he looked at is, hey, people go on picnics. When they go on picnics, what do they need? And he found that people had to take many things, you know, like a box like that, an ice box or whatever, and their music, they wanted a blender, whatever. He said, why don't they put all of this together? And the first time he tried it and launched it at a price point, it didn't succeed. Went back, reworked on it, and wanted to raise about $500,000 so that he can produce it. How much do you think he ended up raising? Anyone with an idea? How much?
1 million.
Sorry?
1 million.
1 million, okay. $500,000. Okay, that's his target. $500,000 was his target. $500,000. $13 million. 13. 1 3.
What?
So to me, Indiegogo and Kickstarter are good places to validate your idea. If 13 million, you know, if people bought $13 million worth of advanced sales, it tells you that this is a very interesting product. But of course, they executed it very badly. They got very greedy. Once they started developing this, they did not deliver to those who prepaid, but they started selling it through, you know, other channels at a higher price. So you have to be ethical, otherwise people walk out of you. They were very unethical in the way they did. But there's a very excellent example of innovations don't have to be rocket science. Here it's very simple. Understand the needs, the pains of people, create a solution that they will be happy to buy. $13 million for something as simple as this. I'll say go look it up. It's a very interesting product. Yeah? The other one I like to talk about is This one. How many of you have come across this? What is it?
Oh,
Paperless pen.
It's a fan. So, what is the value offered by this? What's the value?
Makes you look good.
Makes you look good, okay.
I think the biggest thing about this is really is childproof.
Childproof, yeah. So, children have a tendency to be curious, they poke the fingers, they could get hurt, yeah. So, this childproof. Second, I don't know whether you know, it produces 13 times the wind flow that a normal fan produces. And what principle does it use? What technology does it use? Extremely old principle called Bernoulli's principle. Bernoulli's principle was used to design aircraft to take off, right? And very, very old thing. So the point I'm trying to get across is it doesn't have to be the latest technology. Technology is only an enabler. It can be a very old principle like Bernoulli's principle. This is Dyson, by the way, this is my James Dyson. He's my hero. He's an engineering hero. This guy's an amazing guy. I wish someday maybe I still have time to become someone like that. So Dyson is an amazing guy. So 13 times airflow compared to a normal fan. And very old principle, Bernoulli's principle. Amazing, yeah, amazing. Yeah? So any questions on why?
Well, how do you verify a paint? What questions and what's asked?
Oh, very, very simple. Pains are always exhibited by people, but you have to ask the right questions to get the right answer. For example, in the good old days before mobile phones, you see long queues of people waiting there. Now that is pain, people having to wait. But if you went and asked them, what would you like to see your waiting time to be shortened, they would have simply said, more phones, pay phones, right? They would have never thought about mobile phone. So that is why Steve Jobs is famously known as saying customers don't know what they want, yeah, because they are very good, customers are pretty good in giving you feedback on what they already see, but something that's not yet created, they may not be able to give you guidance. Yeah?
So like incremental innovation versus brand new innovation. So
absolutely. Incremental, they can always tell you, okay, I don't want this feature, I want this feature. All that they can tell you.
Which one's better?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. For example, take a, when the cameras were made initially, they came as a monolithic body and lens. But then someone decided, hey, people may want to use different lenses, so let's separate these two. That's pretty incremental. In the sense, it's not something very disruptive. But people have made a lot of money with that kind of concept, right? So it doesn't matter incremental or nothing, but typically the risk levels are lower in incremental innovations because there's something already in the market, you know what people want. Disruptions, the risk is higher. So it may take longer for you to deliver a disruptive innovation. Yeah.
With a consumer product company, they spend a lot of time on ideation. Like thousands of ideas have to come in before they have one incremental. So for that sort of environment, is it better to come up with a new product line or incremental?
I think I will not exclude, I will not say either or. I think you should look at both, but it has to be a portfolio-based approach. There is this concept called running the company, growing the company, and transforming the company, right? Typically, the investment made across these three categories by most companies, enlightened ones, yeah? Those not enlightened, 95% goes into running the company and 5% across the other two. Enlightened companies spend about 70% for running the company, 20% for growing the company, and about 10% for transforming the company. So it's a portfolio-based approach. You want to take an approach where you're not only protecting your current interests, but also protecting your future interests. Okay? Any other questions? Otherwise, you jump into when, yeah? eBay. How many of you know the origins of eBay? How did it come about? eBay was created by a guy called Pierre Omidyar. Pierre Omidyar was driving his girlfriend, I forget, from probably New York to Boston or something like that. And his girlfriend was a collector of something called Pez. Pez is a candy dispenser. Yeah? You go to a store, you buy candy dispenser, and she was a collector. She had a problem. A problem was I have many duplicates and triplicates of a particular type. At the same time, I do not have certain other kinds of pairs. So how nice it would be to trade. Yeah? I am happy to trade one of my extra pesos with somebody else who's got an extra one. So PA said, okay, let's try it, and that's important, validation. He set up a website to see whether this would work. Setting up a website for something like this doesn't take a lot of time. Yeah, today I think people can do it pretty fast. And when he set it up, he found within the first few weeks, few 100,000 hits. Yeah? And they were growing very rapidly. And that is when he went to Checkpoint Ventures to raise funds. And this is a smart thing about PA. Many founders hang on to the idea they want to be the guys who run the company. Checkpoint Ventures told PA, great idea, a lot of potential, but you're not going to run the company. They actually hired this lady called Meg Whitman from Hasbro. Meg Whitman came from the collectibles division, because this is all about collectibles. They hired somebody from the collectibles division because she understands the customer psyche, right? As somebody who has been dealing with collectibles. So that is why it's very critical for you to understand two things from this example. One, you may have started with an idea, you may have a great idea, you may have started a company. Very quickly bring the right person, right, not anyone. In this case, they brought Meg Whitman because she has good grasp of collectibles industry, right? Bring the right person to scale. It's very interesting. She used to earn, I'm told, I read, it's in print, so I assume that it's verified, yeah? $650,000 US per year plus bonus. I think she was started on $150,000 plus stocks. And I don't think she complained, right? And she's done extremely well for herself. So there again a very interesting thing. There are people who want to start up a company and want to pay themselves the same salary that they get currently, and that's not going to work. Yeah? When you go into a startup, you have to start thinking differently. 650,000, she came down to 150,000, but she had stocks. If the company did well, I'm sure she made much more than what she lost. So very, very interesting example, eBay. So I always say, pay attention to what your girlfriend tells you, right? Maybe there's $1 billion idea there. Huh? So we don't know. At least in this case, there was a very, very good idea. Of course, later eBay was transformed. Companies start with an idea and over time they morph. That's a different story, yeah? And the other one, Dropbox. Anybody knows why Dropbox came up? There are two versions. I'll share both versions. I know which is true. Yeah? One, they say the guy, just pull up a chair if you want to join us, and don't feel shy about asking questions. And this guy forgot to bring an external drive when he went for an important meeting. That's one version. The other version was that he was having problems sending large size files because emails typically limit the size of the files that you would do. So again a pain. Earlier it was a question of I would like to trade, that's a pain, here another pain. So that is Dropbox, yeah. And then if you look at this one, this is amazing, SK2. Very high margin product, very high margin product. How did Procter & Gamble create this? Scientists told them this, let's do this. Very interesting. Two executives of Procter & Gamble were visiting a Japanese temple. They were climbing up the hill. They saw two old women on the side grinding something. Yeah? And this is important, the power of observation. They looked at these old ladies and were curious, what are you grinding? Again, she mentioned some name. And then they found these women had wrinkles all over the face, but the hands were very smooth. And they were using their hands to push the paste back into the thing for grinding. And they said there's something here. They took these two roots and they did some chemical analysis, and then came SK2. So observation is very important, very critical. You look around, you'll find there are several opportunities if you have the right mindset and the right pair of lenses. Yeah. So I thought I'd share these examples with you so that you understand innovation can come from any quarter by observation, because of pain. This, of course, we talked about this. This is interesting in Swash. Anybody heard about this? It's not become very popular, but I expect the next version to be very popular. This is by Whirlpool. It's a collaboration between Whirlpool and Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble make the pods that you see there, and Whirlpool makes the machine. Basically, it tries to find an alternative to dry cleaning. You can hang a dress in the hanger and it sort of quote unquote cleans it within 10 minutes. Okay? It's really not cleaning, but it's still wearable, much better than what it goes in. And it costs about $400 US. And the pods, they used to be selling like 10 pods for $7 US or something. It's amazing. You know, the way this is like trying to take something at an industrial strength like dry cleaning, trying to find a version of it for consumer use at home. Again, another very interesting approach. So all these are very interesting things that we can learn from, and I think history is a great teacher, right? But this one you have to remember, whatever you think about, there can be adoption hurdles. Yeah? Adoption hurdles because society is not educated enough, or something is not moral, not ethical, or you're crossing religious boundaries. So before you rush to develop anything, first thing ask yourself, is there any reason the market will not adopt this? And if you cannot find a reason, then please proceed. Yeah? I'll tell you, in my previous thing at KRDL, we had one of the best biometric technologies, face recognition. The reason we developed it was we found that fingerprinting was quite good, but there are some countries where they would not use scanners for fingerprinting, because if there was somebody who ate pork and scanned, and the next guy is a highly religious guy and he cannot use that scanner. So, and as a result, they had to find an alternative to fingerprint. And that is why we started looking at face recognition here. So, you really have to ask yourself, is there any reason at all that the markets will not accept this? And if you find even the slightest of reasons, just walk away. That's what I would say, walk away. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your effort. Find, because there are so many interesting opportunities to do. Yeah? In fact, today I've been talking to Lux for some time. There's a great innovation that was, invention by my former colleague, and deep technology, but I haven't yet found a team that I can build a company around that. And there are tons of possibilities of creating things. So the moment you find that there's likely to be adoption, walk away. Okay. Any questions?
Just to check, because just now you showed the picture of that dry cleaning machine, right?
Swash. It's not dry. It's not really dry cleaning.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing that came to my mind, right, is that a lot of companies, what they do is that they will first come out with a product first. Then after that, they will try to shrink it down, miniaturize it. So is that considered as a form of innovation as well?
Absolutely. For example, I'll give you MRI machines. Yeah, MRI machines. They have an aperture, very large aperture. The entire body goes in. For orthopedics, you don't need it. Yeah? For example, if you want to scan an arm or a leg, you don't need it. So you can miniaturize. Miniaturization helps in more than one ways, and it has to be based on what problem you're trying to solve, and are there enough people who want to use that solution, and can you price it at the right price point? Yeah. Certainly miniaturization is very important, but I want to share with you, I've got a lot of deep experience in this. Two examples that I want to share with you. I don't have slides on it. A very good friend from Emory University called Dennis Liotta. He's a professor of chemistry, and he developed a small molecule hoping to position it as a cure for cancer. Did not work. He tried to say, yeah, any good professor of chemistry says, where else can I use it if it fails in one? Yeah? So this is called resilience, right? You really don't give up. Then he found it worked well for HIV. Today, 94% of HIV cocktails has this small molecule. And of course, pharmas, they basically copied his formulation, And Emory University went after them, and they ended up buying the intellectual property for $500 million. And as the policy of Emory University at that time was, half the proceeds go to the inventors. So 2 professors got $125 million each. And the postdoc that they worked for, who worked for him, they were generous in giving him $5 million each, so $10 million US for a postdoc. So there are, when something goes wrong, you should never give up. That's an example I wanted to give, right? The Dennis Leota and pharmaceutical. The second thing is, you have to ask the right question. If you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get the right things. For example, I have a very good friend, Bala Manian. Bala Manian is in Palo Alto, and he has done 8 companies, all in devices, imaging devices in medtech. Yeah? And all of them, he has been extremely successful. He sold out all the companies. And Bala then wanted to start a company in India. He happens to be the brother of a very famous guy who was always taunting him, you can do all this thing. In Silicon Valley, can you do one in India? It's a good startup in India. So he said, okay, what is the problem India is suffering? At that time, there were a very large number of HIV patients in India. Thailand and India were 2 major pockets of HIV patients. And then he said, okay, diagnostic kits are very expensive. So can I make a diagnostic kit cheaper? So it goes back to your question of miniaturization and pricing down. Yeah? His company is called Reametrix, R-E-A-M-E-T-R-I-X. And he set up one in Bangalore. And I learned a lot from him. I said, hey, Bala, what's the difference between Silicon Valley culture and Indian culture? He said, Desai, Silicon Valley, I asked an engineer to do something. He will try. If it doesn't work, he'll come back and say, hey, Bala, it doesn't work. In India, they will never come and tell me it doesn't work. They'll keep trying other ways. They think if they come and tell me it doesn't work, it's a loss of face. You know? So they will waste time just trying things whereas the problem formulation might have been wrong. You know? So maybe we have to go back and revisit the problem formulation. So he went in. He wanted to create a lower cost diagnostic kit. And then very soon he found that it's not going to work because the device required some reagents, which are wet reagents, and which have to be stored in a refrigerator. And if you want to take a low-cost one, it implies you want to take it into the deepest of the country, deep parts of the country, which are going to be like 40 degrees to 50 degrees centigrade and dusty, and power is not guaranteed. So he had to redo the whole thing, and so that he had to use dry reagents, and he had to develop a solution that will work in the harshest of temperatures. So he had to reformulate the entire question. That's an example. These 2 examples I want to share with you. One on resilience. If it doesn't work in one place, try somewhere else, and there you cannot simply do a cost down. You have to adapt it to local conditions. That's very important.
So, right, so in case, going back to adoption hurdles, would there have been an example where, you know, there was an adoption hurdle, but he overcome it by finding other ways? Right?
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily walk away from really.
No, you don't walk away. That's why both are examples of resilience. Don't give up, right?
Yeah.
Don't give up. Find another way of
So
solving the problem.
Because your earlier statement about adoption hurdles, I was thinking, don't necessarily walk away from
No.
adoption.
Find another way.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Who should innovate, right? It's a very interesting question. I will not name the company, but many years ago, about 10, 12 years ago, a very large Indian company invited me at the corporate level. You know, they have many subsidiaries. They have 100 over subsidiaries. To go to one of the subsidiaries and do an innovation audit. They say, you're an innovation guy, come and tell us, are we doing things right or wrong? And I visited them, and the head of HR was my contact person, and he was walking me from his office to something called, he said, let's go to the innovation center. I told him, Sudhakar, why do you do innovation center? He said, what should I do? He said, you should really do an innovation square. He said, what is it, Desai? Let me do it. And I said, no, I'm pulling a leg. I said, hey, there is no such thing as an innovation center. Innovation should be done by anyone and everyone in the organization. It cannot be just a selected few who should be doing the innovation, right? And he said, yeah, surprising you make that statement, because I was visiting, because this company was at that time $2 billion company, $2 billion US, and they had many locations. And he said, last week I visited one of the locations, and a young man got up and said, why should I not innovate? And he said, I have no answers. I said, yes. And that's a good question, and you should say, you can innovate. So, who should innovate? Let's talk about this. Yeah? We're talking about unicorns, right? Of course, unicorns, be very careful about the unicorn business, because $1 billion valuation today may suddenly go south tomorrow, right? You probably have been following Snapchat, for example. Snap's going down like crazy. Yeah? So, but anyway, unicorn is a good goal to have. I thought I'd just share with you. It doesn't take a lot of people. I always say at least 3 people, minimum 3 people. It has to be a cross-functional team. Typically 1 technology person, 1 sales and marketing guy, and the third should really be a person who can raise funds. And these are the 3 people that you really need in a team. If you had 2 programmers sitting together and trying to do something, they'll be debating till the cows come home, on which way to do, what's the better way of doing it. So you need to have cross-functional teams, and you see a lot of them, both in consumer and enterprise space, were created by about 5-member team. It looks like that's an ideal number, so I thought I should share that with you. But cross-functional, remember, it's extremely important to be cross-functional. And even there, at different stages in the progression of a startup, you need to have different people head up the effort. For example, early days, ideation stage, the person who's most creative should be heading up. The moment you go into design, someone who's got better design skills should head up. When you do implementation, someone who's done development previously should be there. And people sometimes make the mistake of rushing out and hiring a CEO. CEOs don't come cheap, so never hire a CEO. Hire a sales guy first, so that you build up the book and then go hire a CEO later. Yeah? So it can be anyone who can start an innovation. It doesn't have to be a selected few. But you have to remember, an innovation should be priced properly and should be a solution to a pain and aimed at a target customer base. That's important. Any questions on this? By the way, any of these things, I don't know how Chuck wants to do it. I'm happy to share the slides at some point in time. Okay, yeah.
So this is based on product innovation?
No, any service, product.
Go-to-market innovation? Go-to-market, taking a product to market in a different way?
It's not limited to just products, it can be service. But when you do service, again, in 2003, I was surprised. I came across a graphic. General Motors. What kind of company is General Motors? It's no trader. It's really, they make cars, right? I came across a report in 2003 where the average price of a General Motors car was $17,000 US. So what do you think would be the profit on a single car? Profit?
I would say 2,000.
2,000. Any other numbers? You're comfortable with 2,000 or any other views?
8,000.
500, 8,000. I think it was between $38 or $48 per car. Per car, $38 or $48 per car. In fact, GM made 70% of its profits that from its services. It had 2 services, GMAC Financial Services, and the other one was really OnStar. OnStar was growing at a CAGR, compounded annual growth rate of 33%. And so sometimes you have to ask yourself, yeah, you may have a product, but are you going to rely entirely on a revenue from product, or are you going to create a service that's going to bring in your profits? So GMAC contributed to 70% of the profits for GM at that time. I've been looking for more up-to-date data, but I haven't seen a graphic with a more up-to-date thing. But 2003 is okay, it's pretty, I think we can extend that more or less with some minor changes. So don't be, for example, you look at all the bikes, bike share, bike rental thing, or whatever, mobile or all those things. Why is that they can do certain things? It's a service, right? Rental service, yeah? But if you look at it, there's a hardware. Right? The real thing is the locking mechanism and how it communicates, all those things. That is intellectual property. So oftentimes people think services don't need any hardware. Not true. Yeah? Not true. For example, a grand old example is really ATMs. banking as a service. Yeah. Banking is a very simple service. I take your money, I give you an interest rate, I give him a loan, I charge him higher, so I make the difference, right? That's my profit, that's banking. Yeah? But ATM was really to extend the services beyond the office hours and in locations where there are no branches. So if you want to grow your market, you have to think differently. You may have to use hardware to offer your services. Yes, sir?
Demystify Uber, who's up there. Is Uber an innovation in technology platform?
No, Uber is a business model innovation.
Okay, is it a business model innovation in how it organizes people in terms of either customers or drivers? So when you say business model, I'm just really curious.
Again, let's talk about Uber, let's talk about Airbnb. Both of them are nothing new. In fact, the people who used to backpack in Europe often used to go to B&Bs, bread and breakfast. What did Airbnb do? Airbnb scaled it to a global level, right? Because it's not something new. That's why one of the things we have to always remember is ideas are only valuable when you're able to scale them. So similarly, people used to do ride sharing, right? For example, I don't know whether you have ever experienced carpooling. Right? I used to carpool with my friends. I used to take the kids to school sometimes they do it. So ride sharing was again nothing new. But what Uber did was to find a means of scaling it. So both are examples of what you call a shared, it's really a sharing economy, and they succeeded because of scaling. Scaling is very critical. And even things like Facebook. Facebook was not the very first example of something like that. In fact, earlier examples were in Stanford, but they did not scale. They used it for connecting the alumni, whereas Facebook came out of Harvard and then they said we want to make it a global service. So scaling is very critical.
So in this case, right, can we also say that scalability is also one of the important
Sorry?
Scalability, is it also an important criteria for innovation to be determined as successful or not successful?
If you don't scale, somebody else will. Yeah? That is why I encourage all the people who work with me on innovation is to think of scalability from day one. You may not be able to implement everything on day one, but you need to have a plan. This is what I'm going to do first. That's my next point, and that's how I'm going to scale. If you have no clue about scalability, don't waste your time starting a company. And many companies I've seen, very successful, pretty slow. I can talk about a company that I was very excited about. It's called Innova Technologies, started by a business school student in SMU. It had a product called ProTag. ProTag was really, you put it in an asset that you want to protect, and the moment you walk away a certain distance from there, it will remind you that you have forgotten something. Yeah? He actually produced 10,000 pieces. Red dot. 10,000 pieces and hoping to sell it over 3 months. Got sold out in 2 weeks. Yeah, it's a very interesting case study. I sold out in 2 weeks. And I called this guy, Rick Tan, his name is. I said, Rick, time to go raise $5 to $10 million scale. But Rick was always interested in growing organically. He said, no, I want to go back to Indiegogo. I said, no, it doesn't work. If you don't do it, somebody else will eat your lunch. He never listened to me. And somebody else ate his lunch. Scaling is very critical. You don't necessarily get excited because you're the first one that you will be most successful. You have to scale. Scaling is very critical. That is why there's this interesting term called global. Global is global, but try local. Yeah. So Singapore is a great place to go global because government gives you a lot of support, and we have a fairly heterogeneous population so that you can try your ideas here. But you have to think global. When I ran the institute, I always ask people, ask yourself if you're successful, when will you go to your next market? What's the next market? I shared something with Lux, which I'm happy to share with you. Anytime you have an idea, I say there are 3 simple questions. And if you can find answers, honest answers to these 3 questions, and the answers are convincing, then you have a business. Yeah? The first one I told him was that if you have something, you have a great idea, why would anyone want it? Yeah? Again, we are talking about must have, which is a need, as opposed to good to have, which is a want. Anyone will need or want it. Yeah? So that's the first question. Yeah? That is some way of validating whether anyone is going to buy a product or service. Yeah? Second part of that first question is, why from you? You may have a great idea, but maybe there are many others who have great ideas as well. What is your USP? Unique selling point. Why would people come to you? That's something that I would encourage people to think about. Then the second question I told him that I always ask people to think about is, how much will they pay? Do you know what kind of solution it is? Is it a solution for deep pain or shallow pain or good to have, not necessarily must have? And how often will they pay? And that's important. Second question. If you have an innovation where people will be paying quite regularly, that's a good innovation to have. You have a regular cash flow. Yeah. The third question really I said is, how many will pay and from where? So that question will get you to think about, where do I start and where do I grow? And scaling is very critical. Okay. Any other questions? How is the next question, right? And you need to start thinking differently. Yeah? You need to start thinking differently from whatever the people are doing. If you are also, it's also ran, it's going to be very tough. Yeah? Unless you have deep pockets, you should never try to redo something that others have done. Can anybody guess what this is? Can anyone guess what this is? It's not a bomb, okay? It's an amplified image of a motion sensor. Motion sensor, do you know where people started using motion sensor? Security, right? Early days when you didn't want people to go into some part of your premises, you set up a motion sensor. But since then, look at the different applications of motion sensor. It's been used in so many ways. So anytime somebody introduces a technology for a specific application, you can ask yourself, where else can I use this? Okay, that way you reduce your R&D, right? You're able to, your capital requirements for starting a company will be lower. It's been used in many other areas, you're drying your hands, that's a motion sensor. There are, soap dispensers and toilet paper dispensers, they're all motion sensors, many motion sensors. So that's an example of how you may want to look at first deployment and see, can I make money? In fact, steam engine is a classic example. Steam engine was invented to pump water from the deepest of mines to the surface so that miners can continue to work, they won't get drowned, and that's the reason. But it did not make a lot of money there. It made a lot of money in the railroads. So of course you require rails, etc. Infrastructure has to be there. But it's very important to remember that any technology, if it's deployed, ask yourself, where else can I use it? Okay, so that's one quick way to give you an example. ENIAC, I'm sure that most of you know, was the very first computer created by University of Pennsylvania. And now I'm slightly shifting to the disruption part. Yeah? ENIAC was commissioned by Ministry of Defense so that they can do war game simulation and crypto analysis, basically breaking down encrypted messages. At that time, it was Germany versus US, that's what was happening. But look at ENIAC. ENIAC is so big there. Yeah? Again, I don't need to state the obvious there. But eventually, when vacuum tubes came out, it gave rise to mainframes like IBM 370. It was called IBM and the Bunch. Bunch stood for Burroughs, Univac, NCR, CDC, and Honeywell. Yeah, those are the things. But it was for corporate accounting. The application changed. Yeah? Corporate accounting was a thing. And the machines used to cost $1 million or more, which means, while the corporates can afford it, the divisions in the company could not afford it. So it took a while for technology to advance because they used vacuum tubes, which are very big. So until the transistors came about, when that technology came, you had the mini computers, which could be used for scientific purposes, scientific calculations, scientific applications, as well as department level accounting and other things. Of course, Digital Equipment Corporation was a market leader at that time. That's an example of a PDP 1135. So you see the disruption from mainframes to mini computers. It's very clear the market leaders in one don't remain as market leaders for the next part of the industry when the innovations evolve, because they're obsessed with whatever they're doing and they are fixated on the current customer base, and they sometimes don't realize the value of the next opportunity. Yeah? And from there, of course, integrated circuits, we know PCs came about, and then the laptops. Again, I want to talk about these PCs and laptops a little bit. In fact, Craig Christensen wrote a very interesting book called Innovator's Dilemma, where he said that market leaders in disk drive industry were producing 500 quad inch disk drives, were very, very happy with the then customer base. Their own R&D teams came up with 3.5 inch disks, but they couldn't succeed in marketing it because if they went to the same customers that they were selling 500 quad inch disks, the per unit cost of 3.5 inch per unit storage was much higher than 500 quad inch because same material, same tooling, same everything, and you have reduced storage space. But where it was most successful was really in the laptops, because laptops did not have the luxury of footprint, larger footprint for 500 quad inch disks. So you have to ask yourself, when you have a technology, is there a new trend emerging where I can deploy it, although my current customers may not need it? Don't try to sell it to your current customer base if it doesn't make sense. So this is a very interesting thing about laptops, and of course from there we go into smartphones. So I think I'm more or less coming to think I wanted to have a brief interaction with you guys, but if you're more interested, I've written about 5 Kindle ebooks. You're welcome to go and read up a lot of methodologies there. Today was not about methodology, but to get you excited about what kind of innovations will succeed and what will not succeed. I'm open to other questions if you have.
Well, there was a question out there that says that, in startups, they are quite fixated about once they come up with one innovation, right? Because they think that that's the best thing since sliced bread, right? But as you showed in your last few slides, the industry itself is already moving very rapidly.
Yeah.
All the way from your BDP11 to a smartphone, right? And the guy who sell the BDP and the guy who sell a smartphone actually is two different companies, So how would someone like in a startup which doesn't have much resources, right, sort of keep track of innovation, or should they don't care, or just do
I think when you talk about a startup, especially, I have to make sure I'm inside. Normally I like to walk around when I'm conscious about remaining within your frame. I learned a lot of things from a lot of people, and there was one guy called Robert Wong who told me this. Robert Wong, you might know him. He is a Malaysian, and he said, Desai, value of a startup is zero when you do a startup, right? And really, somebody's going to, if you're going to sell it, you're going to IPO or whatever, there's a value called X. So 0 to X. Why do people value company X? And he said there are probably 2 reasons. One is 3 reasons. Third is I'll come to the third one. 2 popular reasons. One is because promised future revenues and growth looks very rosy. So I don't have this in my collection, like Microsoft buying Hotmail. I don't have a mail. And I don't have the luxury of time to redevelop a substitute. I would need it immediately. Marketing pressures. Then that's a good time for people to buy companies. So if you want to build a company to be bought over, you should try to position it appropriately. That's the big challenge about knowing where to position. So Microsoft, on the other hand, went sometimes to the partners. Many years ago, there used to be, I forget the name of the company, the word processing software, etc. They said, we are moving from the traditional Microsoft, we're going to Windows, we need you to come along with us. And the guy said no. And because they said no, they came in and created their own Office suite. Yeah? So back to Chuck's question about how would I know what is happening. One is, the first thing is you need to start with a good product or service in mind. There's no doubt about it, scalable one. And there is a very interesting thing called by Jeff Jeffrey Moore called Inside the Tornado or Crossing the Chasm, either of the books, where he says every innovation has a finite life cycle. Eventually it'll go out of vogue. So he says people create great technologies, but they are people who like to create technologies, not products, not solutions. People don't want technologies, they want solutions. So he recommended a method called bowling alley strategy to create a solution using a technology that was sunken in a chasm or a pit. And at that stage, he says, you have to focus entirely on your customer, your first customer. 120% effort on your first customer. If you succeed, your customer is going to become your salesperson. They're going to go around talking about how good you have been, how good the product is. And that's what happened with Documentum and Merck. Documentum developed a solution for Merck. It used to take 60 days from the board making a decision to file an FDA application to the actual deposit of the application. Documentum said, I can create a solution where the day your board decides to file the FDA application, you'll be able to file the same day. And every day saved is so much revenue and profit for the company. So basically what they did was, there was a document management system, there's also a workflow system. They combined these two. They know the basically template of the FDA application, so wherever information was generated, they started filling it as soon as they can. The final day when the board meeting was there, application was complete. Very simple. So when they did that, the Merck CIO went around boasting about how great they were able to do, and then they're all in the same circle. They started learning from each other, and the other pharma companies also went to Documentum, and that's what happens. But very interestingly, that is when the market begins to form. When the market begins to form, and you want to be very clear that when the market has been formed, you are the gorilla. Because what happens is that traditionally, the early majority of the people buy from market leaders. You want to be a market leader, and typically, these guys say that market leaders are called as gorillas, and they have between 30 to 40% of the market. The objective is gorilla. At that time, they studied that Oracle grew at one point in time almost 100% year on year, and they focused entirely on sales and growth, and not on new products, and that's the focus. So during the tornado phase, you focus entirely on growth, sales and marketing. And he said sooner or later competition will set in, and that sets in, you get into the Main Street. In Main Street, you're competing on bells and whistles. So when you hear a product, I got 12 megapixels, another one says I got 14 megapixels. The product is already in the Main Street. That is typically the beginning of the end of the innovation cycle, because the people who buy after that are waiting for falling prices. They will only buy when prices fall, and there's a percentage of people, about 16% of them, called laggards. They will either never buy, or if they buy, it will be when it's extremely cheap. So when you hit the Main Street, depending on your product development cycle, if it's a service, you can start thinking about your next service there, but you don't start looking for the opportunity. You already look for it, and you have a whole bunch of offerings that you want to make following the first one. And if it's a like a hardware product or something, it takes a longer time. Then you want to start developing this when it's the formation of the tornado, where the market is rapidly being created. So you have to be very clear that your first product cannot be your last product. You have to have follow-on products, and the team should be ready. And that is where, at the very first inflection point, when you are getting cash flow positive, that's a good time. With your first product, that's a good time to start thinking about bringing in the right CEO who can then grow the company, because many of us are not necessarily very good at growing a company. We may be very good at creating a company. We may have great ideas, but you want to bring in people who will grow the company. But you have to bring the right people, just like I said, Megawitman. You get the wrong person, then it's going to die. It doesn't matter. For example, if it was a guy who was in the services area and he has a product company, you cannot hire the person. does we going to lose the profit?
Okay, I think we'll end the session here. I think this is incredible. Thank you very much, Desai, because I think in this short 45 minutes an hour, actually a lot of little nuggets, you know, talking about the innovation cycle, and we cannot just stay in one, you know. And the simple thing I think I like best is really the three simple questions, right? Who won your stuff, right? That's number one. The other one is why would they get it from you? And finally, how much and how many times they buy from you? I think that is actually a very simple question to actually start to evaluate when you're looking at your business and all. For that, thank you very much, Desai. I really appreciate it. Okay, thank you very much. Food is here, right? So please grab a pizza and then we have a conversation. Thank you very much.